European Central Bank cuts interest rates for the fourth time this year. US producer prices increased 0.4% in November. And IEA forecast a well-supplied oil market in 2025. Welcome to the Economic Bulletin, where we present a comprehensive coverage and expert insights on the latest economic trends and developments. Welcome back. We start off with the European Central Bank, which cut interest rates for the fourth time this year on Thursday and kept the door open to further easing ahead as inflation closes in on its goal and as the economy remains weak. The central bank for the 20 countries that share the euro reduced the rate it pays on bank deposits, which drives financing conditions in the bloc to 3% from 3.25%. It was at a record of 4% only in June. It also signaled that the further cuts are possible by removing a reference to keeping rates sufficiently restrictive, which is economic jargon for a level of borrowing costs that curbs economic growth. And back again to our news, Germany's economy minister Robert Habeck has unveiled an initiative to accelerate the shift to electric vehicles. The plan includes a €100,000 public charging credit for every electric vehicle, alongside new tax incentives to make electric vehicles ownership more appealing. The incentives, targeting both new and used electric vehicles buyers, aim to boost adoption and drive the transition to sustainable mobility. The Swiss National Bank has slashed its policy rate by 50 basis points to 0.5%, the steepest cut since 2015. This surprise move under new Chairman Martin aims to curb the rising Swiss franc and aligns with easing global monetary trends. Inflation at 0.7% in November remains within the bank's 0.2% stability target. The bank also signaled readiness to adjust policy further if needed. Brazil's central bank has exceeded expectations by raising its benchmark rate, rather a sleek rate, by 100 basis points to 12.25%, while indicated similar hikes for the next two meetings. The rate, which could reach 14.25% by March, marking an eighth-year high as policymakers combat rising inflation fueled by robust economic activity, a tight labor market, and a weaker currency. A recent government spending package failed to meet expectations, impacting real and asset prices and the inflation outlook. China plans to raise its budget deficit, issue more debt, and ease monetary policies to stabilize growth as trade tensions with the US loom. The Central Economic Work Conference outlined measures prioritizing growth over financial risks, including fiscal levers, interest rate cuts, and boosting household consumptions. Facing a property crisis, high local debt, and weak demand, Beijing aims to maintain around 5% growth despite potential US tariffs. Expanded subsidies and increased incomes are expected to offset export losses. Final economic targets will be announced in March. Australia's unemployment rate dropped to an 8-month low of 3.9% in November, outperforming the Reserve Bank of Australia's year-end projection of 4.3%. Employment rose by 35,600, well above the expected 25,000, driven by robust full-time job growth. The strong labour market highlights unexpected resilience just days after the bank adopted a dovish tone, opening the door to potential rate cuts. The data has led markets to scale back bets on February rate cut as the economy shows continued strength. Data from the National Institute of Statistics and Census of Argentina showed that Argentina's inflation rate hit 2.4% in November, the lowest since July 2020. Annual inflation eased to 166% from 193%. Price increases were led by education, rent, utilities, while food and non-alcoholic drinks saw slower increases. Annual inflation remains high, down from an April peak of nearly 300% and anticipated to end 2024 at around 100%. However, Economy Minister praised the progress, hinting at the possible reduction in the peso's controlled devaluation rate. European Union ambassadors have approved the 15 sanctions package targeting Russia's shadow tanker fleet and Chinese firms supplying drones to Moscow, according to diplomats. Diplomats revealed that the sanctions include a 6-month extension of the Czech Republic to import Russian oil-based products via Slovakia. The package is expected to blacklist nearly 30 entities, over 50 individuals, and 45 tankers. Currently, 2,200 individuals and entities are sanctioned, facing travel bans and asset freezes within the 27-member bloc.
Russia, once a dominant player in the global economy, now stands as the most sanctioned country in the world. With over 20,000 sanctions imposed, this unprecedented economic backlash has sent shockwaves through Russia's trade, finance, and energy sectors, reshaping its economic future. Key to these economic sanctions were measures targeting Russia's financial systems. Banks were removed from the global SWIFT payment network, cutting off their access to international transactions. Additionally, assets held abroad by Russian oligarchs and state entities were frozen, and trade bans were placed on key industries. Meanwhile, Russian energy exports, the lifeblood of its economy, were severely restricted. The European Union, previously reliant on Russian oil and gas, implemented gradual embargoes and price caps, forcing Moscow to seek alternative buyers like China and India. This week, the European Union escalated its efforts with a 15th sanctions package, designed to close critical loopholes in Russia's economic defenses. The package targets Russia's so-called shadow fleet, a clandestine network of oil tankers used to smuggle energy products under the radar of sanctions. By blacklisting an additional 45 tankers, the EU aims to choke one of Russia's last remaining avenues for energy revenue. The sanctions also extend to Chinese firms supplying drones to Moscow, cutting off another supply chain that fuels its military operations.
And joining us from Moscow is expert in Russian affairs, Dr. Ammar Qaneh, to discuss the latest developments in the Russian economy and the European Union's approval of the 15th package of sanctions on Russia. Welcome, sir, to Q News. What is the strategic importance of targeting Russia's shadow fleet in this sanctions package, sir?
تحياتي للجميع.
Greetings to all of you. Economic sanctions and lately the 15th package, I think, won't affect the Russian economy. We've seen during the last 2 days through the economic opening into the east and to curbing the work in the foreign currencies such as the US dollar, strengthening economy domestically that contributed in the economic growth, and we've noticed in clear figures that indicated the growth of economy last year. That an indicator gave us 3 factors. Firstly, that Russia, directed to the domestic production and the expansion in villages, as well as the military manufacturing that contributed in boosting the economy, the collective economy that decreased the unemployment in Russia. We think that the Western sanctions that would extend to the entire Europe as a whole, as affected in the beginning on energy and the fuel resources, whether they are from oil and gas, that weakens the Western economies vis-a-vis the trade addressing with Russia that boosted in a new relations with China, India, and the South.
Sir, can this package significantly curtail Russia's ability to generate energy revenue?
With respect to the energy equation that has 2 parts. Firstly, the oil, that Russia made several measures such as a fleet and directing to China and India, and return that is oil production to Europe and different countries to preserve the Russian economy. I think that the agreements that were resilient, the attempt of the West to fail it, and among OPEC, and the second equation that is related with the gas, and the loser is the Western zone that missed the cheap gas, regardless of these sanctions. The gases flowing from Russia that gain to sustain it, but in addition to sell the Russian gas during the past 2 years with rubia, that represented a positive step to boost the Russian currency, the ruble, away from the other economic sanctions, and we think that the Russian banks and others, and I think it is a question that has been controlled, and we see it in a very disciplined state, and even the current sanctions won't do any more, which is the treachery parties, and the 15th packages and the last of the section, because it's the biggest burden in the economy upon the Western system, particularly the European Union.
Okay, sir, could the implications of targeting Chinese firms accused of supplying drones to Russia strain the economic or political ties between China and Russia?
With respect to the Chinese role, it was Biden to restrain the economic sanctions, and the political Chinese stance is very positive neutrally, and we cannot forget that China is relevant to the oil with the cheapest prices from the market. What's happening now, I think, it's only attempts upon China and different countries, but Russia in the international energy equation that has a great figure and cannot be compensated as the American side promised the EU that all the oil and gas productions that to be sent to the United States. That we are before a juncture because of the economic, geographical perspective and the formation of geo-economic on top of which the BRICS and the joining countries to this bloc and the other coalition that boost the economic stance of China and Russia. Now, I think it's a dilemma is how for the US to address this crisis, and politically we may see that they are just like is following the transitional period in the White House and
True,
would
sir.
affect positively upon Russia. And as we can see upon the term of Trump between Washington and Beijing in the next and all the following phases.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ammar Qaneh, for your informative knowledge and your insights. And now we move on to the latest developments in the United States. U.S. Labor Department has reported that the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits rose unexpectedly last week, with initial claims increasing by 17,000 to a seasonal adjusted 242,000 for the week ending December the 7th. The jump, likely influenced by post-Thanksgiving volatility, does not suggest a major shift in labor market conditions, but highlights ongoing cooling in demand for labor. Continued claims, a proxy for hiring, rose by 15,000 to 1.886 million, indicating that some unemployed workers face longer jobless periods. Despite job growth accelerating in November, the unemployment rate edged up to 4.2% from 4.1%. U.S. producer prices rose for more than expected in November, aimed at a surge in the cost of food, although a moderation in the prices of services offered hope that the disinflationary trend remains in place. The Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics said that the producer price index for final demand jumped 0.4% last month after an upwardly revised 0.3% increase in October. In the 12 months through November, the PPI shot up 3% after increasing 2.6% in October. Consumer prices increased by the most in 7 months in November, while a measure of underlying prices pressures continued to run warmer over the past 4 months. President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to accelerate environmental and regular approvals for companies investing $1 billion or more in the United States. The initiative aims to attract major investments by streamlining the permitting process. Through specifics on how traditional and the regular steps will be expedited remain unclear. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, federal agencies must conduct environmental reviews before approving large-scale projects, including energy production and infrastructure development. The proposal evidences Trump's focus on boosting economic growth through reducing the bureaucracy hurdles. China's Ministry of Commerce has expressed its willingness to engage with the incoming Trump administration's economic and trade team. This comes amid heightened tensions, including China's recent investigation into a major U.S. chip maker following U.S. export controls on advanced semiconductors. Additionally, China has banned exports of critical minerals to the United States, responding to restrictions on its chip-making industry. Despite these challenges, China's openness to dialogue signals a desire to stabilize economic relations with the United States.
妥善管控分歧，推动双边经贸。
In the MENA region, the United Arab Emirates Cabinet has approved the Emirates Entrepreneurship Council allocating 300 million Emirati dirhams, equivalent to $81.7 million, to inspire and empower youth entrepreneurship, shared by the Council, which aims to foster innovation and expand opportunities for young entrepreneurs. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, emphasized the United Arab Emirates' resource-rich economy and encouraged young people to capitalize on its vast opportunities and strive for excellence. Jordan's Department of Statistics has reported that its consumer price index rose 1.54% year-to-date through November, reaching 110.62 points compared to 108.94 points last year. It also highlighted personal accessories as the main inflation driver, soaring 12.38%. In November alone, the CPI climbed 1.35% year-over-year to 111.04 points. Month over month, the CPI edged up to 111.04 points in November from 110.61 in October. The International Energy Agency forecasts a well-supplied oil market in 2025, even as OPEC Plus extends the production cuts. The agency expects demand growth of 1.1 million barrels per day in 2025, up from a previous estimate of 990,000 barrels per day, driven by China's stimulus measures. However, 2024 demand growth was trimmed by 80,000 barrels per day due to the economic challenge and a shift to electric vehicles in China, tempering the outlook for the world's second-largest oil consumer. OPEC plans to revive output in 2025 after years of cuts. Reuters has reported that Russia's Rosneft has finalized a 10-year agreement with Indian private refiner Reliance Industries to supply nearly 500,000 barrels of crude oil daily. The deal, worth approximately $13 billion annually at current prices, is the largest energy partnership between the two nations and underscores their deepening energy ties amid Western sanctions on Russia. The Rosneft supplies, set to begin in January, will cater to Reliance refining complex, the largest in the world. This agreement highlights India's growing reliance on discounted Russian oil, which is now over a third of its imports. That's all for now. Here's a roundup for today's key headlines. European Central Bank cuts interest rates for 4th time this year. US producer prices rise 0.4% in November. And the IEA forecasts a well-supplied oil market in 2025. That's all for today's Economic Bulletin and Qnews. Stay connected for more news and updates.